Welcome to Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. Joyous conversations about what the afterlife evidence and modern science combine to tell us is true about our one reality. You have nothing to fear. You are eternal and you are perfectly loved. Knowing the truth changes everything. Now, here's Roberta.
Welcome to Seek Reality. I'm Roberta Grimes, and I'm so happy you're with us today. My dear friends, our guests today are always a very special treat. I think that by now everybody knows their story, and it's an amazing story. Miikey Morgan is a sixth-level being who last had lived on Earth in the 1600s. But he wanted so much to help us now that he chose to take a voluntary 20-year lifetime that ended in 2007. I'm not sure how we say that. Those dates, 2007, so he could speak to us in the voice of a modern American 20-year-old. So now he answers our questions about the afterlife, the greater reality, and how everything works from the sixth level of the afterlife, the level that's just below the source, through his mother of his most recent Earth lifetime, Carol Morgan. So today our guests are Carol and Miikey Morgan, who are with us for the 24th time. I first met Carol a few years after she had lost her son Miikey in an auto accident. Carol knew nothing about the afterlife at all, and she was a grieving mom. But I heard her story, didn't believe it for a minute, but I've tested Miikey's knowledge exhaustively, and he is exactly what he claims to be, I have to say. He's a very exalted being, amazingly enough, who has achieved the level of the afterlife that is just below the source level. I've spent more than 50 years researching the afterlife, and he knows a great deal more than I do. His answers are always dead on accurate. Well, if you'll pardon the expression. He answers my questions correctly. And he often then adds extra information, which I can see is obviously also accurate, but some of it I've never heard of before. I've never seen him make a mistake. And yet he talks like, an American kid. It's unbelievable, but it's believable to me. Miikey communicates with us now from very near the Godhead level, and he answers our questions in a way which I just think is a fabulous gift of service to the world. So welcome back, Carol and Miikey. I'm thrilled to have you back again.
Here we are once again, Roberta.
Just to reassure everybody, you're very close now to Miikey. You know he's right with you. You're not a grieving mom anymore. You're very close to your son.
That's correct. My relationship is it's just different. He's not in the physical form, but he's certainly just a shout away. I ask for his help a lot. I talk to him probably every day and he probably gets tired of it. But anyhow, he's close. I mean, I guess that's my one big thing with all of this is our loved ones really are close and they can hear us and help us. And so it's a very big comfort and has helped me immensely on the grief journey that I had certainly initially. And even now, I mean, every now and then I have a moment where I feel kind of sad about, something, wondering how my life would be. But I just know my life is different. My relationship is different, but the son who I love so dearly is still very close and with me. And everybody should realize that with themselves when it comes to loved ones they have that have passed on.
You do have another son, a younger son, who is still in the body, right?
Yes, that's correct. That's Joey.
But do you think that everyone who has lost a child can be comforted to know that their son is just a shout away, even though they don't feel that as much as you feel that with Miikey?
I would hope so. I guess that's why I went public with all of this in the first place and that's even why I wrote the book that I did. And that was pretty gutsy at the time because I was brought up strict Catholic. But I thought if I could help one grieving parent, it was worth it to me to do this. And I know actually this is what I'm supposed to be doing, but It really is true. And Joey is just as into it as I am. And, he gets signs and all that, and he truly believes all this that goes on. And well, it's just amazing. If you open your heart to things, it's amazing what you notice. And I always say, don't doubt, because doubt shuts the door. And, it's the connections just never end. The spiritual realms are all around us. And why not use their support and help and love? Because it is there. It absolutely is there. I know it. I'm beyond believing. I know
Yeah,
it for
you know it
sure.
for sure. Yeah, no
Yes.
question. But let's talk about your book just for a second. It's Flying High in Spirit, a young snowboarder's account of his ride through heaven. And I can recommend this book so highly. I think it's the best book ever written about what it's like to first transition to spirit. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. And Mikey wrote it. He dictated every word meticulously. I was there when it was written, and I got to say, Flying High in Spirit is the book to read if you want to know what it's like to first transition and what it's like to first arrive there. It's the best book ever written on that topic. So there's a little shout out about your book. It's the best. So without any further ado, I'm going to start asking questions. Now, just to know how we do this, people send us questions. These are not questions that either Carol or I have made up. People have sent these questions in, and the way to do that is to just send an email to me, info@robertagrimes.com. I shoot them right over to Carol, and Carol asks these questions of Mikey. She doesn't attempt to answer them. She doesn't know anything about the afterlife still. She's never researched it. I have. But Mikey knows more about this than anybody else I have ever heard of, because he's there and he's at the top of it. So he can answer these questions better than anybody else can, and he does. So these are, again, all questions that have been sent to us, and you can ask these questions. You won't hear from Mikey right away. We have quite a backlog now, but you eventually will get your answer, and you'll get it from the source. So here's a question. I have heard that millions of souls want to come to Earth. Is this true?
Mikey tells me yes, that this is true. Souls do want to come here. This is the dimension for us where we can really advance ourselves spiritually, because we are dealing with both negative and positive aspects, much more than in the afterlife. And we deal with materialism and ego and society rules and all of that. And it's very challenging here, as we know. And Mikey always tells me we learn from experience. That is really the way we learn. And we come here for spiritual growth. And so, yes, having life here, coming here as a soul, is really a great gift. Now, I know when we're here, we struggle, and I know that myself, but it really, truly is a gift. And he says it's just the more loving and kind and positive we are, the more advanced we can make ourselves spiritually. And so that's the incentive. We come here to exercise our free will, and this dimension has the challenges and then some. He actually says it's probably the toughest school out there, is what he tells me.
That was my experience too when I did the research, and I spent decades doing afterlife research. That's what both Craig Hogan and I came to that conclusion too. There's no place tougher. If you love the first Star Wars movie and you remember the canteen, and if you go into that canteen in the Star Wars movie and you say, "Well, I'm from Earth," they'll all step aside with respect, because you're from the toughest place there is. So, all right. So the reason they come here is to experience the toughness of Earth. It's hard on Earth, and that's why they come.
Yep. That's correct. Because we have the negative, well, there's negative and positive here. So we choose, we can make choices through our experiences that we have. And I always tell people, we learn something from every person that we meet, every encounter, when you think about it. And I've really paid attention to this more after I've started all this with Mikey. It really is true. So, for example, even when Mikey's accident occurred, I would have people say to me, "Oh, I know what it's like because I've lost my parent or my dog or whatever." Well,
No, nothing's like losing a
it's
child. Yeah.
unless I would say, unless you've experienced it, you have really no idea the pain and agony of the loss of a child. As a parent, I think it's the worst thing. And also,
Yep.
every scenario of how a child passes is different. So I can't compare myself to necessarily another parent who lost a child. All that I can compare is the pain and agony that's associated with the actual loss of a child. It's brutal. I mean, it's a grief journey like no other. You can let grief overtake you, which I refuse to let happen because grief can destroy you if you let it.
Yes.
But instead, I did everything I could to reach acceptance of a situation that you can't change. So what do you do to keep moving on in life, to keep progressing? And I knew I had to pull it together for Joey and everybody else that I love here on earth and for myself. And I'm actually pretty proud of how I've done. And I'm trying to help others as much as I can with that as well. Whatever it takes, because everybody does grieve differently.
That's right. But this questioner also says, well, can't those in heaven experience the negativity that there is on earth?
Not like here. I mean,
No.
I think, heaven is a lovely place. From what Mikey tells me, he goes, you can't even imagine how great it is. So, coming here, obviously, the conflict and it's just tough here. And we
Wonder why babies cry.
why babies do cry, right?
Babies say, "Oh no, I can't believe I did this to myself again." That's why babies cry.
Oh, it's tough here.
That really is why babies cry. Okay, here's another question. What can Mikey tell us about the Arcturians and other beings' role here on Earth at this time?
So I asked Mikey this question, and he tells me the Arcturians are actually a very advanced entity, soul entity. He says they're of a different soul group type than we are.
Yes.
But they're extremely wise and advanced. And so they can come, and they're interdimensional travelers. And I want to touch on this again. People think sometimes, well, these extraterrestrials or whatever are flying in a spaceship from a planet from here. And Mikey says that's really not how it is. How they all of a sudden appear and then they all of a sudden vanish is how they resonate their energy. So, as we talked about before, we are all energy. When they match their energy or vibration to this earthly dimension, then you can see them and they show up. Or when they change their vibration, they vanish. So that's where you get that, where people are like, "Oh my gosh, I saw this," whatever they saw, a different looking vehicle or what they're traveling in or whatever. That's how they do it. So they are interdimensional travelers. They are very wise. He tells me that they come, they want to help, they're curious, they're helpers. And he says there's a lot of different entities that exist. It's infinite out here. There's infinite dimensions. So to think we are the only thing, Mikey says, is really pretty closed-minded of
Yes,
us.
that sure is. Yes. We are told that their role is really largely protective because there are some baddies, and the Arcturians are largely protective. They're working for God as opposed to working for any negative entities, and they're largely protecting us.
Right. And Mikey says they're very wise and they're here to help. They're helping us. And so, and yes, there is negative-ish too, so but they're a good thing. They're a good thing for us.
Yes, so we should, if you see one, say howdy, but you probably won't ever see one in your life because they try to stay out of the way and not be seen. They're servants. They're a servant class, effectively. Another question. Do we get to meet our spirit team when we return to the afterlife, including our master spirit guide and maybe some of the other spirit guides and guardian angels who have loved and supported us during our lifetime?
Absolutely, yes. So
Yeah.
Mikey talks about this. I know we discussed it even in the book, how when he returned to the afterlife, and certainly when we kind of have our life review and everything, we meet people. In fact, we can be greeted by these wonderful individuals when we first transition also. And so we absolutely do get to meet them and interact with them, and we discuss our experiences that we have. And it's a time for learning for us to kind of review the experiences we had and the choices that we made and everything like that. And I always tell people, remember, it's all about our intentions that is really significant, because sometimes we're human, we can make errors and mistakes, and we try and we go at it again and try to improve ourselves. So but it's for learning. But we absolutely do meet these lovely individuals when we return.
And they were with us. Some of them were with us for part of our lives. Some of them were with us for our whole life. And they love us. And no matter how well or how maybe poorly in some spots we lived our lives, they're very encouraging. Yay, team, you did this or that especially well. Good for you. They're very encouraging to us, which is, always good. Yeah, they tell us you really tried here or there. And it's nice to know that there are beings not in body that love us so much. And they're working for God. We have no idea how much we're loved, which is what I say at the end of each of these episodes. It's true. How much of our relationships on earth are with members of our soul group, our eternal soul group, as opposed to members of other soul groups?
Mikey tells me, like, for at least with us, I'm going to use myself or whatever as an example. My more closer family, immediate family, siblings, and whatever are in my soul group, he tells me. Okay. But now the one thing he also tells me is within our soul groups, we can be of different vibrations. Okay. So not everybody is, let's say, like Mikey is, for example. I mean, some of us are lower vibration or whatever, but our soul group, generally, we work together to achieve the experiences we want to have. We actually meet together before we reincarnate and kind of discuss what we want to accomplish and what we would like to do. We do interact with other soul groups, and that can make it interesting. Again, our free will choices alters our path, but our guides try to keep us on course as best that they can. But we do interact with other soul groups. But Mikey says, with us anyway, we were from the same soul group. Now, sometimes we can intermix a little more with other soul groups within our family units and whatever. So it's more soul dependent, but we generally speaking travel with our soul groups, and our soul groups can be quite large. They can be quite large, he tells me.
So he's part of your soul group too?
Correct. Mikey is part of my soul group. That's what he tells me.
Oh, okay. So he was, let's just say he was the star of the class.
I would say he's the star of the class,
Sure.
but he does, he tells me that our soul groups aren't necessarily all the exact same vibration, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Sure it does.
Right. So we can fluctuate within our soul group, but again, we learn from everybody we encounter. So we do cross over with different soul groups and interact. And it can be interesting. I think about, and now this is me thinking this, but it makes sense to me because Mikey has used this example with me so let's say you go on a trip somewhere and you end up running into somebody and you just click. You get along great. It's like you've always known that person.
Yeah.
What is that? Well, Mikey says it just so happens that chances are you've been with that person before and they're from your soul group. Yep. So, I mean, we're more widespread than you think. We're not what he's trying to tell me is he says, Mom, we're not concentrated in one little place necessarily. You can be scattered around a little bit also, but our soul groups can be bigger.
I guess that can be very big. That's one of the things I've wondered about, and the evidence has been inconsistent. But I think they can be very big indeed.
They can be big, is what he tells me. Now, how big is big? Well, I don't know if 1,000 is. I mean, I don't know. I never really asked him for a specific number, but he says
I think that they're very big, but then I think they break off sort of in that's a super soul group. And the super soul group, smaller pods, and then those have even smaller pods. So I think it depends on it. Are we talking super soul group or some of those smaller pods? And what you may have met on a trip is someone from the super soul group that you may not have had, that you may have had a lifetime or two with, but you haven't had a lifetime lately with, and so you sort of still click with them.
Correct. And you just know it. Or, like he says, you meet someone and you're like oil and water. No matter what you do, you just are always button heads, right? So, I mean, he'll say, that can be where the person's from a totally different soul group. It's interesting. But even with someone like that, we learn, right? And I think
exactly.
We learn. And I think what we learn from that personally is being respectful of others people's perspective, because our perspective is based on what we've experienced. And so we actually can learn quite a bit from that individual.
Absolutely right. That's very true. Okay. Can we normally see and communicate directly with angels when we return to the afterlife and are living there?
Mikey says we can if we want to. Now, the other, he always tells me the more spiritually advanced we are, the more elaborate our reality is in the afterlife. That's kind of the incentive.
Oh, how interesting. Yes, I can see that. Yeah.
So that's why we want to keep improving ourselves, because we keep advancing and moving up, it's not even moving up. It's just improving. It's improving our vibration. He always tells me, don't think of it as, linear. It's just all about vibration. Everything is energy. But he does say that, yes, we can. And he certainly can. That I know for sure. Mikey can, I know for sure.
Okay, Carol, this is a complicated question. And is the soul group for each member of a given soul group the same? Or does each soul have their own unique soul group? Think of it this way. A family is a family. but each member of that family goes out into the world and accumulates their own separate set of friends. So does each member of that soul group go out into the world and accumulate their own soul group, which is slightly different because they would have some friends in common, some soul group members in common, but also some that are different because they've been adding people to their personal soul group as well.
My understanding of that, with how you just explained that, Mikey tells me we interact with different soul groups. That's how we learn. Does that individual then become part of our soul group? I still think they're a member of that other soul group, is what my understanding
with their original soul group, but they have interacted with us.
Correct. I mean, we often will cross soul groups, interact with different soul groups for learning, to achieve the experiences we want to experience. But we're still of our soul group.
Okay. And so in another lifetime, we might encounter that person again, and we'll remember that we encountered them before.
Correct.
But they're still of their own soul group. We're still of our own soul group.
Correct. That is my understanding. That is my understanding.
That was my understanding too. So that makes perfect sense. Okay.
That's what he tells me. I mean, we don't start developing that's what he has told me.
Really confusing. That's like 12-dimensional chess right there.
That's a interesting question for sure.
Yeah. Okay, this is what I often get asked. Do we plan our next life right away after returning to the afterlife, or do we wait and plan it just before we reincarnate?
Mikey says, "Oh, you want a vacation when you get back."
For sure. There's too much fun to be had when we get back. We don't want to think about coming back here again soon. That's right.
He goes, you want to enjoy this a little bit. When you get back, he goes, he says, generally speaking, you don't want to hop back on this earthly train again right out of the gun. So he will tell me that we will plan that life before we decide to reincarnate again, but we absolutely take a break in the action or have a little vacation or whatever. He says, you're not going to want to come right back. He says, when you get back here, he says, you're going to really like it and you're going to want a break. So that's what he tells me. We don't just hop right back at it. So he says it really is not real common where immediately that soul comes back right away. He says usually there's a pause for sure. There's a pause.
It's very typical that people will wait there for everybody they knew and were close to.
That's correct. He said, generally speaking, that's how it goes. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I understand too. And is the afterlife part of the astral world?
So this is a good question. So Mikey and I have talked about the astral dimensions or realms. So he's not calling it the astral world. He's calling it the astral dimension or realms. So his point is not the entire everything is considered in his perspective, the astral realms. He calls the astral realms our communication realms, where from the afterlife souls can communicate. So let's talk about like communication dreams or near-death experiences or out-of-body experiences, anything kind of that. Mikey says, for example, a near-death experience is occurring in the astral realms.
Yep.
It can appear like the afterlife. It can represent like the afterlife, but it is not the true afterlife dimensions where we go when we transition. So with a near-death experience, I guess that's the best example I can use. When we have that traveling, where our soul is out of our body, floating around in the astral realms, which can happen because we have the silver cord that's still attached to our physical body.
Right.
And we can communicate with loved ones in the afterlife dimensions, but we're actually in the astral realms communicating, and the experience can feel super real because Mikey says it is real, but you're not in the true afterlife dimensions until the silver cord severs. You release your body. The body dies. The soul lives on. That's when you go to the true afterlife dimensions or realms. So it's different.
Again, his record remains perfect. That's exactly what we've discovered independently by doing our afterlife research. Exactly the same thing. In fact, go ahead.
I was going to tell you, when we do this astral traveling, so like these communication dreams, and I've had a few of them where, oh my gosh, they're so real. I mean, I could hold Mikey and hug him and feel him and everything. That was a very real experience, but I was in the astral realms.
That's right.
Now, Mikey says we can only go to the afterlife dimensions once the cord is severed, and we cannot go back into our body. So that's the difference. That's why a near-death experience is because we're still connected. That silver cord is still connected.
That's right. Extensive near-death experiences will often include a moment when the person having that experience is told, you have to stop now. If you continue, you will enter where the dead are. And if you do that, your cord will sever and you will not be able to go back to the earth. So you must stop here. And that is another way that we know that they're two different places. But again, Mikey's record is perfect. He always answers these questions correctly every single time. Your son is a superstar, my dear, as we know very well. Okay, here, related question. Are the physical world and the astral world, and I would then say also, and the afterlife, all there is?
No. Mikey says it's just he says the question is the physical world, is the physical world and the astral world all there is? Well, the astral realms, he's not calling the astral. I think this person has the astral world as all of everything, maybe. I don't know, but Mikey says the astral dimensions are separate from the afterlife dimensions, and he says it's just infinite. It is infinite. Yes. It just goes and goes and goes. I mean, he says it's just beyond anything our human mind can comprehend. So he says there's absolutely more than the earth. There's absolutely more than the astral realms. So he keeps calling them realms or dimensions. He says there's just a lot more, and it just goes and goes and goes.
Yeah. But what we hypothesize, and this is just a hypothesis, is that our universe, our material universe, is one, if you might think of it as one level, the lowest level perhaps. And there are probably hundreds or thousands of levels the size of our universe, if size is something we can think about, that are all, each of them is individually an astral realm, but there are thousands of them. So, and each of them somewhat higher in vibration than the next. So that's big if you think about it. Stack those up, and at the very top is the seventh level, which is the source level. But there are really thousands between the material universe at the bottom and the source level at the top. So he's right. I mean, There's no way to even comprehend the size of all of that put together. There's no way to even comprehend it.
I mean, he tells me that all the time. He says, you can't even, Mom, he says, Mom, you're just not going to be able to figure it. I mean, so it's
It exceeds
beyond
the human
anything.
mind's ability to grasp it. Yes, he's
Right.
right.
Our minds just cannot grasp the magnitude of all of this, you know. It's got to be just incredible, you know. But that's what he tells me. It's just.
But I think all of that together probably encompasses all there is. And it all exists within consciousness. So,
correct.
But the thing is, one of the things that it does not have is the attribute of size. Because there's nothing to compare it to. It exists within mind. There's nothing to compare it to. So anything that you cannot compare something to has no size, right?
Right. I mean,
it's simultaneously it's tiny and infinite in size because there's no way to compare it to anything.
There's no way to compare it to anything. So I just, it's beyond my understanding for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, so I don't get it.
He's again right. It has.
I don't get it. So
yeah,
that's
really,
okay.
It really is no size. But Miikey is really a pistol. I just think he's so amazing. I just love him to pieces. He appeared once in a reading I was having with Thomas back when I used to have readings with Thomas before I knew him very well, and he was hysterical. He came dressed as a teenager, wearing a t-shirt and shorts, and he would alternate between looking like a teenager with a t-shirt and shorts and looking like this gigantic ball of light. And he would switch between the two. And that was Miikey. And he was a teenager on a snowboard. And then he was a ball of light. That was Miikey. He was so, we wanted him to answer a question. I don't remember what the question was now, but he did come to answer the question and then he disappeared again. But that was how he chose to appear to us.
Apparently they can alter how they look by how they resonate their energy. And so
that's what he did though. He resonated between being a gigantic ball of sort of purplish golden light and a teenager kid on a snowboard. And he answered the question and then he disappeared again.
Yeah. I mean,
he's so playful. He's hysterical.
Well, he's the same. I mean, the one thing I'll tell people is, you know, our loved ones are the same when they transition. I mean, they're the same. We're the same. I mean, our personality and all that goes right with us. So they got a sense of humor here. They'll have a sense of humor there. And I mean,
he was grinning the whole time. I don't even, as I say, remember what the question was, but it was hysterical because he certainly doesn't. Most people who are 6th level beings and upper 6th level, which he is now, are like 7 feet, 8 feet, 9 feet tall, and they wear these robes and they wear all these insignia of rank whenever they appear in the lower levels of the astral plane. Not Miikey. Not at all. He's just fun. Whatever he does, he's fun.
He's the same.
And he still snowboards. He says he can snowboard like Shaun White, which apparently is a big snowboard person, whoever he is.
Oh, Shaun White. Miikey loved Shaun White when he was here on Earth. So he's the big Olympic snowboarder. But yeah, Miikey tells me he still snowboards. So he alters his vibration and he goes down to those Summerland levels and has a good time.
Yeah.
So
he has snowboarding friends even there. We have come to the end of our time. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. But we'll be doing this again soon. We try to do it every quarter and we have a lot of questions, but we'd love to hear from people who have questions that Miikey hasn't yet answered or that maybe you would like him to answer more fully. And he's He's happy to answer your questions. He enjoys very much doing this. This is why he came back to Earth. He didn't mean to make his mom sad, but she understands why he did this now. When we first understood from Mikey what he had done, she swore she never would have signed up for this, but he said, yeah, Mom, you did. You did sign up for this. And now she understands. But you're having fun with him too, even though it's not quite the same.
Oh, for sure. I mean, he's he still does some really funny signs and just different things that are, so Mikey. So, I mean, you know, I'm doing really well. There's no question about it. I always tell people I have one son on the planet and one son that sits on my right shoulder. And that is probably true.
But
I really don't doubt it for a minute. So
notice where he appears. And if you, I should do more talking about this, but if you want to hear from your spirit guide, ask your spirit guide to step outside your body. Your spirit guide will go right behind your dominant shoulder. And she's right-handed. He goes right behind her right shoulder. My Thomas, I'm left-handed. He goes right behind my left shoulder. And that way you can tell if you hear a voice, you can hear, and you don't want to hear it from inside your head, and you don't know whether it's you or your spirit guide talking. She always knows that it's Mikey talking. Oh, my dear, what do you want people to take away from today?
Well, probably that. What I guess I'm trying to think of what we talked about today. As far as we talked a lot about soul groups and after life, the dimensions, how infinite everything is. I think with soul groups, I know I always go back to this, but I think if we are try to be, especially now this year there's a lot of different controversy and just stuff out there in our social environment. If we can all be just respectful to each other and kind and understand that a lot of people's opinions can be based on what they've experienced, and we've all had different experiences. And so as we move forward with everything, just to be kind and respectful to each other, because we all deserve that.
We all deserve that, yes. And the world is based on love. There's really nothing else. And so we want to add to that love if we can. Thank you, darling. And once again, my dear friends, we've come to the end of our time. This has been Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. I'm so happy you could be with us today. Please never forget that you are a powerful, powerful, eternal being. You never began, you never will end. And when you get that, it changes everything for the better. Next week, our guest will be Peter Hayes, who will be with us once again to talk about the Spiritist Federation, which will be holding its 18th symposium in September. Spiritism prospers in Brazil especially, but it is growing now in the American and environs fairly rapidly, and I think it's kind of wonderful to talk about it. It's interesting. It's based on what Allan Kardec taught when he was here in the 19th century, and I'm delighted each year just to help them get their word out. Please join us next week for what is always a fascinating, quite moving discussion. I really like Peter a lot, so I'm going to enjoy being here with him next week to talk, and I hope you'll join us. This week we've been talking with Carol and Mikey Morgan. I love every time Mikey's here. I love hearing whether this time is he going to, because I never know what his answers are going to be. I just know the questions. And always, always, Mikey's straight on accurate. And Carol deliberately never studies what's true about the afterlife. She's always kind of surprised with me about whatever Mikey is going to say. They've been here for their 24th time, so we've been doing this for a decade or more. He was only 20 when he died in an auto accident and broke his mother's heart, and then put it together again when they figured out a way to communicate. They started really with a pendulum, which I didn't even believe would work, but oh yeah, it works. And now, of course, she confirms with the pendulum still, but they communicate mentally. And really, this is what could be better in a way, but to have her son so close to her now. Mikey came back to teach all of us through Carol, which is something that actually everyone who was with him in the 6th level thought that was such a sacrifice. It earned him so many brownie points, as it were, in the afterlife that he now is at the top of the 6th level, right near the source level. We are honored actually to have a being who is at his level as our frequent Seek Reality guest, and he is a beautiful, playful, loving, adorable, actually wonderful human being who is, words cannot express how honored I feel that I get to speak with him so often. If you would have any questions for Mikey, you can simply send them to me at info@robertagrimes.com. I pass them right along to Carol and Mikey. Now, as you know, our great friend Craig Hogan is the president of Seek Reality Online, which is your one-stop resource for all things afterlife. You're going to die and you're going to go to the afterlife. Your life really is eternal, whether you like it or not. I've had people say, I just want to die. It doesn't happen that way. You're going to live forever, whether you like it or not. So if you're alive now, you always are going to be alive. Learn the ultimate truth from our dear friend Craig, who is your worldwide ultimate expert on all things afterlife. And teachingsbyjesus.com is your single resource for all the beautiful divine truths that are brought to us in perfect love by the greatest teacher of them all, Master Jesus. So go to teachingsbyjesusnow.com, now, and learn from Jesus what he taught. Because the religion was created, wasn't it, by the Roman Emperor Constantine and not by Jesus after all. Also, as you know by now, my nonfiction books are available, but I have no time to talk about them because we are over time. All of these more than 500 past episodes are available wherever audio podcasts can be found, and you also can see new video episodes each week on Roku, Fire Stick, YouTube, and elsewhere. And meanwhile, this has been Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. Please enjoy and make the most of this coming week in our one reality, always knowing that you are a powerful, eternal being, and you, most of all in this entire universe, you are infinitely and eternally loved.
You've been listening to Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. Roberta blogs and answers questions at robertagrimes.com. Join us every week as we explore what the afterlife evidence and modern science combine to tell us is true about the one reality we all share. Knowing the truth changes everything.